The house sat quietly behind a wrought iron gate on a modest street in East Harlem, shaded by aging maples and flanked by brownstones with decades of memory carved into their brick. To most, it was just another Harlem townhouse beautifully restored, historically intact. But to Gloria and Marc White, a newly married couple from Atlanta with ambitions of opening an art gallery in the city, it was their dream home. The realtor had been brief. "It belonged to Cicely Tyson," she said. Yes, that's Cicely Tyson. The legendary actress had passed away in 2021. And since then, the house had sat vacant, gently collecting dust and silence. The Whites considered it an honor to live in a space once occupied by a woman who embodied so much grace, dignity, and strength. From the beginning, there was a sense of reverence. Gloria, a visual artist, turned the old library into her studio. Marc set up his workspace in what used to be a sunroom on the third floor. The walls were thick, the house solid. But from their very first night, something felt attentive. They chalked it up to the natural creaks and sighs of an old building. But some noises didn't quite belong, the soft tread of footsteps above them when no one was upstairs, the whisper of a chair dragging against hardwood behind a closed door. Still, they laughed it off, until they couldn't. One night, around 3 a.m., Gloria was stirred by the sound of jazz music. It was faint, as if playing from an old record 2 rooms over. Half asleep, she stumbled downstairs, thinking maybe Marc had left something running. But the speakers were off, the record player untouched. The music drifted through the hallway, sweet and low, like it came from another time. Marc, too, had begun noticing things. His phone battery died rapidly when he was alone in the house, and his calls were often interrupted by static. He once answered a call from Gloria only to hear a woman's voice whispering a scripture he didn't recognize, and it wasn't his wife's voice. They started comparing notes. Every morning, the front parlor smelled of gardenias, though they never kept fresh flowers. Gloria's oil paints would be rearranged in the night, not messily, but neatly, almost intentionally. Once, a paintbrush was balanced upright on the windowsill, something she swore she never did. Gloria began to feel watched, not in a malicious way, but in a way that made her careful with her words. Like the house was listening, like someone wanted to be remembered. Gloria started digging. She read everything she could about Cicely Tyson. She watched interviews, found old articles, and even reached out to a local historian who'd met her once. Tyson had been deeply private but spiritually grounded. She had spoken often of ancestry, of respecting those who came before. Her mother, she once said, had never truly left the room. Gloria began to suspect the house was not just haunted, it was held, preserved, as if Cicely, in her passing, left a piece of herself within its bones. One night, Marc discovered a small box beneath a loose floorboard in the bedroom closet. Inside was a collection of Tyson's handwritten notes, not scripts, but thoughts, prayers, affirmations. The top page simply read, "Let them remember me with kindness." After that, things changed. The strange occurrences didn't stop, but they softened. The whispers became clearer. Once, Gloria heard a voice say, "You're painting truth." Marc swore the thermostat changed itself when he mentioned he was cold every time, without fail, to exactly 72. Gloria once heard humming, low and smooth, while she painted. She recorded it. When she played it back, it was just silence. They started referring to the presence as Miss Tyson, out of respect, out of awe. In the spring, Gloria invited a few fellow artists over to view her new series, all pieces inspired by African-American icons of the 20th century. One guest, a photographer named Camille, wandered into the parlor alone and quickly returned, visibly shaken. "Someone's in there," she said. "A woman, elegant, watching." But no one was there. Other visitors mentioned it too. A sudden warmth in the room, the sensation of being studied. One child pointed at an empty chair and said, "That lady's pretty." What scared them at first had now become a quiet comfort. Today, Gloria and Marc live in harmony with what remains. They don't try to explain it anymore. They simply accept it. They keep the house as it was, warm, intentional, filled with books and plants and music. Gloria leaves fresh gardenias in the hallway every Sunday. Marc makes sure the jazz station plays low every evening. Sometimes, Gloria will pause her painting and look to the parlor doorway, expecting to see a shadow or a shape. There's nothing, but she still smiles. Because something is there. Not frightening. Not broken. Just present. Cicely Tyson's house doesn't feel like it's haunted. Feels watched over. And in its silence, there is grace. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. The summer that followed was dense with heat and atmosphere, the kind of Harlem summer where the air felt like warm silk draped over your skin, and everything moved a little slower, pulsed a little deeper. The maples along the sidewalk shivered with the weight of sun and memory, their leaves whispering in patterns no one quite understood. Inside the house, the days began to carry a rhythm that belonged not to the city outside, but to something more internal, something shaped by the house itself. Gloria had grown attuned to it. The hum behind the silence, the subtle shifts in air pressure when she entered the front parlor, the way the floorboards in the upstairs hall creaked a half-beat behind her footsteps, as though someone walked just a breath behind. Not following, accompanying. She had stopped fearing it weeks ago. Instead, she started talking aloud to it. Every morning, after Marc left for his gallery downtown, Gloria would descend the narrow wooden stairs barefoot, the steps cool under her skin, and she would greet the house with quiet words, "Good morning, Miss Tyson. I hope you slept well." It was absurd, maybe, but it felt rude not to. She kept the old record player in the corner of the sitting room now, beside a dusty leather armchair they hadn't dared move. The records, an odd but pristine collection, had been left behind. Billie Holiday, Nina Simone, Mahalia Jackson. Gloria began to play them one by one while she painted, letting the warm static of old vinyl fill the corners of the house like incense. On some days, the music played all the way through, but on others it would stop midway. The stylus would lift without a hand and hover, like someone didn't approve of the selection. It happened most recently with a newer jazz record, not vintage, but something pressed last year, slick with modern polish. The stylus rose, hovered for a beat, then slid back with a click, returning to the Mahalia Jackson album Gloria had played the day before. She laughed softly, under her breath. "I know," she said. "She's the real thing." And the music continued, the house seeming to exhale. Marc, for his part, was not as ready to speak to ghosts. He respected the house, yes, deeply. He appreciated what it was, what it represented. But he was a man of routines, of plans, of lists, and what had begun as strange coincidence was beginning to gnaw at something deeper in him. His dreams had changed. He never remembered them clearly, just fragments. The tap of heels on hardwood, a woman's silhouette standing beside a window, staring out. Once, he heard a voice say, "You're making it too modern." And when he woke, his fingers were red paint, a color he hadn't touched in days. And then there was the room. On the second floor, at the end of the hall, was a guest room that neither he nor Gloria used. They stored books there, a few unused canvases, some boxes of keepsakes from Atlanta. It was perfectly clean, always locked, until one Thursday morning in August, when Marc returned from the store and found the door wide open, the boxes inside rearranged, the light on. Gloria was out. No one else had keys. He stepped in, cautiously, as if disturbing someone. Everything was in place, but the air was heavy, dense with something unseen. A scent hung in the corners, not floral this time, but powdery, familiar in a way that made Marc's throat tighten. It reminded him of his grandmother's vanity table, of church Sundays, of dignity. He didn't tell Gloria. He didn't want to spook her. But that night, after she fell asleep, he stood outside the room again, hand resting on the doorknob, the hallway dim behind him. And he whispered, "If you're still here, we're trying. I hope you know that." The door slowly creaked shut, by itself. They began to notice the patterns. The piano in the living room, untouched for months, played two soft notes around midnight on certain nights. Always the same ones. A descending third. Gloria checked for drafts, timers, even mice. Nothing. It never happened when someone was looking at it. The gardenias she left by the mirror in the front hall began to wilt faster, but only the petals. The stems remained green, almost alive. One night, she walked past the flowers and could swear the mirror wasn't showing her reflection. But someone slightly taller, older, dressed in something from a different era. When she blinked, it was gone. But the glass was warm. In early September, they invited a neighbor over, a woman named Etta who'd lived on the block since 1972. She was in her 70s, wore big plastic bangles and carried herself like someone who had seen everything and still had time to judge it. As she stepped into the front parlor, she stopped short, her voice hushed. "Oh," she said, "you kept the chair." Gloria nodded. "It was here when we moved in." Etta stepped closer, then looked at the empty seat. "She used to sit right there, you know, every morning, tea in one hand, Bible in the other. Didn't like to be interrupted. She said, 'This is the only part of the day that belongs to me.'" Gloria felt a chill trace down her back. Etta turned to her, eyes sharp. "And if you kept the chair, child, you better show it respect. She's still here." Marc started to laugh, but Etta didn't. She leaned close and added in a whisper, "Some folks leave a house when they die. Others stay behind to keep it standing." It began subtly. The knocking. 3 soft taps, no more, no less, always around the same time, always from the same place. The old back stairwell that connected the kitchen to the upstairs hall. Narrow, wooden, and steep, the kind of staircase servants once used in older homes to move quietly behind the scenes. The first time they heard it, Gloria and Marc were seated at the small kitchen table beneath the frosted glass pendant light. It was late, just past 11. Marc was scrolling through his phone, half listening to the murmur of city noise from the open window. Gloria was folding the cloth napkins they'd begun to use more regularly since moving in, small things, acts of ceremony that felt right in that house. Then, tap, tap, tap. They both froze. It hadn't come from the front door. Not from the windows. It was from inside. Behind the wall. Behind the pantry. Marc turned toward the sound, his brow furrowed. "Did you hear?" "Yeah," Gloria said. Standing slowly, she stepped toward the stairwell door. The air was still, and the kitchen light swayed ever so slightly above them, casting a soft ellipse across the black and white tile. She pressed her palm against the door. Cool. Quiet. Then it came again, closer now. Tap, tap, tap. This time she didn't open it. She turned to Marc. "It's her." Marc didn't argue. The knocking came again the following night. And again the night after that. Always 3 knocks. Always soft, precise, like someone asking not to enter, but to be remembered. It became a part of the nightly rhythm, like the music, like the gardenias, like the smell of something warm and old that lingered at the top of the stairs. They started leaving the stairwell light on. Not because they were afraid, but because it felt polite. On the 4th night, Gloria finally opened the door. She waited until the sound came gentle, deliberate, and then placed her hand on the brass knob, the finish worn smooth by time. The hinges groaned slightly, as if reluctant to disturb what lay behind. The stairwell was empty, but not still. The air inside was heavier, thicker, somehow not suffocating, but dense, like walking into a memory. The walls, painted a muted ivory, bore faint marks from decades past, a scratch here, a smudge there. The smell was strongest here, powder and old cedar. Gloria stepped down one stair, then another, the wood bending ever so slightly beneath her bare feet. When she reached the halfway landing, she paused. Something was watching her, not with malice, with patience. She whispered again, like she had before, "Miss Tyson," and in that moment she felt it. Not a touch, not a sound, just the sudden swell of presence, as if someone had filled the space beside her. She closed her eyes and stood there in the silence, heart steady, breath slow. Then she turned and went back upstairs, leaving the light on behind her. Weeks passed. The knocking never stopped, but it changed. Sometimes it would come earlier, just after sunset. Sometimes twice in a night. Gloria began keeping a small notebook by the kitchen door, writing down the time of each knock. A pattern emerged. The nights the knocks came were all Sundays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. She realized they matched the days Cicely Tyson used to attend services. Mark, too, had begun to accept the rhythm. He no longer flinched at the footsteps in the upstairs hall or the faint music that started when he entered the parlor after dark. He'd even begun talking to the house himself, albeit quietly. A good night here. A thank you there. Little offerings of gratitude. One evening, he set a cup of tea on the arm of the leather chair in the parlor chamomile, just as he'd read she liked and left the room. When he returned, the tea had gone cold, untouched. But the chair's cushion had a soft indentation. Then came the phone call. It was a Tuesday morning, early, overcast. Gloria was in the studio, music playing low, the scent of linseed oil and charcoal in the air. The old rotary-style phone in the hallway, a relic left behind and now hooked up out of nostalgia, began to ring. It never rang. She picked it up. The line crackled. And then, a voice. Soft, measured, slightly southern. Don't forget the mirror. Then the line went dead. She stood there for several seconds, the receiver still against her ear, heart thudding, mind racing. The mirror. There were several in the house, but only one had ever felt strange. The tall standing mirror in the front hallway, framed in dark cherry wood, speckled with age. It had belonged to Tyson, the realtor had said so. Custom piece, she'd noted. Imported. She kept it near the door to check herself before leaving the house. That evening, Gloria stood before it again. The gardenias were already there. She looked into the glass. Her reflection stared back, soft, tired, thoughtful. But then it shifted. For the briefest moment, she wasn't looking at herself. She was looking at another woman. Older, beautiful, regal, dressed in something elegant and dark. Looking not at Gloria, but through her. Then the image blinked back. It was gone. Gloria's breath caught in her throat. She whispered, "We haven't forgotten." And the mirror, ever so faintly, seemed to shimmer in reply. It was around this time that the dreams returned. For both of them, Gloria dreamed of staircases that spiraled endlessly upward, with Cicely Tyson's voice guiding her from above. Not with words, but with feeling, approval, clarity, direction. Mark dreamed of doors opening into empty theaters, spotlights flickering, and a woman standing in the wings with her back turned. They both kept it to themselves at first. Until one night, when Mark woke up gasping, sweat across his brow, whispering, "She said we need to go into the attic." Gloria froze, because she'd had the same dream, and they'd never been into the attic. The door to the attic was narrow, tucked behind the linen closet at the end of the upstairs hall. It had no knob, just a brass ring mounted into the wood, dulled from age and disuse. Neither Gloria nor Mark had ever opened it. They'd spoken about it in passing when they moved in, but there were more pressing matters: renovations, unpacking, the thousand details of inhabiting a place. And if they were honest, the attic had always given them both a quiet, persistent unease. Not dread exactly, but avoidance. Now, in the half-light of early morning, they stood before it in silence. Mark reached first. His fingers wrapped around the ring, and with a soft grunt, he pulled. The wooden hatch creaked open on ancient hinges, groaning like something being roused from sleep. A stale breeze, heavy with dust and something older, dry cedar, mothballs. The faintest note of pressed roses drifted out. A wooden ladder unfolded with effort, its joints reluctant but sound. Gloria went first, flashlight in hand, the beam cutting through particles that danced like spirits in the stale air. The attic yawned wide above her, larger than expected, its floorboards old and gray, its rafters thick and webbed. At the far end, beneath a half-moon window choked with grime, sat a single trunk. Black leather, brass corners, latched, but not locked. She waited for Mark before stepping closer. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The room was hushed, not silent, hushed, like the air before an overture. Gloria knelt before the trunk. Her hands hovered a moment over the latch. The brass was warm. She unlatched it. Inside, carefully packed and wrapped in tissue yellowed with time, were objects that seemed almost too intimate to touch. A pair of gloves, elbow-length and white. A silk scarf, midnight blue with hand-stitched trim. A program from a 1953 production of The Blacks at the St. Mark's Playhouse, creased in the center. A stack of telegrams from admirers, colleagues, institutions. And at the very bottom, wrapped in a faded ivory shawl, was a leather-bound journal. The initials on the cover CT. Gloria reached for it, slowly, reverently. The leather cracked gently under her fingers. She opened it. The first page bore a single sentence, written in clean, deliberate script. If you're reading this, then you've found the rest of me. They brought the journal downstairs. That afternoon, they read it together in the parlor, the light golden and still. Page after page revealed the quiet, inner world of Cicely Tyson, not the actress, the icon, the legend, but the woman, the daughter, the girl who walked the same Harlem streets they now called home. Her doubts, her rituals, her memories of her mother braiding her hair beside that same front mirror, her loneliness after curtain calls, her gratitude to the house, which she called her haven, and something else, a repeated entry, appearing every few months over decades, always in the same tone. I wonder who will come after me. Will they know how to listen? Will they keep the silence sacred? I hope they leave the gardenias. I hope they speak kindly. I hope they see me not on screen, but here in the stillness. Gloria couldn't speak for a long time. Marc stood, walked over to the leather chair, and sat in it softly, not as an act of comfort, but in gesture and offering of presence. I think, Gloria said finally, her voice low and thick. She stayed because she wasn't done telling her story. Marc nodded slowly. And now she knows someone's still listening. That night, the house was utterly silent. No music, no knocks, not even the faint thump of steps overhead. And for the first time since they moved in, the air felt still in a way that wasn't heavy but peaceful. Like an exhale that had taken years to complete. They placed the journal on the mantel, beneath a photograph they had framed not of Cicely on stage, but in her garden, candid, smiling, head tilted slightly toward the sun. They left the parlor light on. And at midnight, just once, the record player clicked on by itself and played a single track. Mahalia Jackson's Come Sunday. When the last note faded, the needle lifted gently, and never moved again. They still live there, Gloria and Marc. Still artists, still believers in the weight of memory and the power of place. They keep the house much the same, not as a shrine, but as a continuation. The mirror still stands in the hallway, always clean. The gardenias are fresh every Friday. The attic remains closed now, not out of fear, but fulfillment. As for Cicely, some say she moved on that night. Some say she's still there but finally at rest. Gloria says it best. She was never haunting us. She was waiting. And someone finally came home. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.